Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Andi Nurhaeril Fitri Ilyas. I am currently in 5th semester at the State Islamic University of Alauddin, Makassar. Here, as a student, I will present an understanding to fulfill the final exam assessment in the curriculum and material development in ELT course. So, in this video, I will explain one by one about need analysis, starting from the discussion in the preliminary phase, the development phase, the review phase, and also some conclusions at the end of the video. The first material is preliminary phase. Before performing the analysis, we must first know the difference between the target needs, what the learner needs in the target situation, and the learning needs, what the learner needs in learning. The target of need is a generic term which in practice hides a number of important differences. These target needs look more at the situation target, terms of the necessities, requirements, likes, deficiencies, and wants. Then, situation target. This target situation analysis is needed for material from asking questions about the target situation and attitudes towards the situation of all participants in the learning process. The target situation analysis framework includes why is English needed. For example, it's for studying, to work, or for training. Analyzing what people do will tell us a little bit what they learn. For this reason, ESP doesn't only focus on what to know or do, but focuses on what to learn in language learning. To analyze the learning needs of students, we can make a framework first. Learning Needs Analysis Framework. Why do students take subject, whether obligation or choices, or because of status, finances involved in promotions? And how do students learn? From the background of the lesson, from the concept of teaching and learning. Brown proposes 6 categories of instrumentation, namely existing information, tests, observations, interviews, meetings, as well as questionnaires. Existing information refers to any procedures employed to gain information by utilizing any available pre-existing information such as literature review, that is library sources, in the form of books, journals, and newsletters used to find information about similar program and about the learning needs of their students. Tests refer to any procedures aimed at measuring the general ability level of the students through proficiency, placement, diagnosis, or achievement tests. Observations refer to category of instrumentation which is carried out by watching a target group and recording the behavior that occur. Interviews refer to a type of instrumentation used to obtain information by addressing open-ended questions orally to individuals or groups, which allow for gathering responses and views personally or collectively. Meetings refer to procedures to gather information by discussing differences in opinions for reaching a consensus from the participants. And the last is questionnaire, which refers to a type of procedures to gain information by providing a series of questions in writing given to a large number of students in order to provide their responses about a language program. Okay, the next discussion is to gather information in need analysis, like whether or not to deploy these questionnaires, present and process data on need analysis. The data we can present in two presentation forms, namely tables and diagrams. As for frequently used diagrams, diagrams of lines, bars, and circles. The goal is to make the data we get easier to read and understand, so it is also easy to analyze and come to a conclusion. After collecting information from the structure of the questionnaire, the next thing to do is use the information in the need analysis, how to formulate an inventory of needs, and how to formulate objectives and aims. To formulate an inventory of needs, there is a need for measures such as the following. The first is the student's linguistic needs. This section deals with the effort of identifying information about the student's learning ability and priority through information provided by all participants. Part 1. The overview of the student's learning ability. In terms of learning ability, the students are required to measure their own micro skills in speaking, vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar by filling in the needs analysis questionnaire. Part 2. The overview of the student's learning priority. This part deals with determining the student's learning priority by analyzing the participants' perception on the importance level of a certain language element and its sub-skills such as vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar to be provided in a course syllabus. Then, the student's learning needs. Learning needs basically refer to the student's learning patterns and styles or learning preferences, which are described by their attitude toward current educational activities. Learning needs also give an illustration on how the student should learn well, which in turn can assist language teacher to give the most appropriate teaching methods, strategies when teaching the students, that the student can finally achieve better learning outcomes. Therefore, the student's learning needs can be described in two different categories: the student's learning problems and learning attitudes. Part 1. The overview of the student's learning problems. Learning problem refers to the difficulties that the learners are facing in learning a certain course, such as psychological problems, linguistic resources, insufficient knowledge of a certain topic. Part 2. The overview of the student's learning attitudes. Learning preferences. Learning attitude refers to the student's feeling on learning something which is normally affected by the student's learning style. Therefore, when a teaching process doesn't match the student's learning styles, will result learning attitudes that decrease the student's effort, creativity in the learning process. After identifying the result of the formulation made in the inventory of needs, of the methods of formulating the objective and target shall be as follows. The things that need to be considered in determining goals and objectives, namely, first, identify students' learning abilities. Second, determine which language components are most needed to be learned as a priority. Third, identifying the most preferred real-life topics and basic grammar. Fourth, identify the obstacles or problems most experienced by students. 5. Identify the learning preferences and learning styles that are most preferred by students. The second material is development phase. After the course aims and objectives are stipulated in the preliminary phase, a number of different activities of planning and developing a set of instructional rules have to carry out. There are three major activities conducted in this phase, i.e., selecting syllabus contents, planning the course structure, and developing teaching materials. First, selecting syllabus content. In this section, the selection of syllabus content is conducted by selecting the major topics and determines the order in which the topic will be presented in the classroom. As Richards states that information gathered during needs analysis contributes to the planning of course content, as do additional ideas from other resources such as available literature on the topic, publish materials on the topics, review similar courses offered elsewhere, review tests or exams in the area, analysis of the students' problems, consultation with teachers familiar with the topics, as well as consultation with specialists in the area. The results of the needs analysis and consultation with lecturers could then list the following 12 initial topics that would be included in course on speaking one for the students at English education study program. However, the list of the initial topics above needs refining by considering course aims objectives, the importance of the initial topics, the students' knowledge, and the allotted time to teach the topics. Richard suggests that when the list of the initial topics has to be reviewed or refined, and the following questions need to be asked. Are all the suggested topics necessary? Have any important topics omitted? Is there sufficient time to cover them? Has sufficient priority been given the most important areas? Has enough emphasis been put on the different aspects of the identified, or will the cover enable students to attain the learning outcomes? Next, the determination of the order of topics. According to Richards, sequencing of content in the course can be determined based on the following criteria. First, simple to complex. Content presented earlier is thought to be simpler than later items. Second, chronology. Content is sequenced according to the order in which events occur in the real world. Third is need. Content is sequenced according to when learners are most likely to need it outside of the classroom. Fourth, prerequisite learning. The sequence of content reflects what is necessary at one point as a foundation for the next step in the learning process. And the fifth, whole to part or part to whole. In some cases, material at the beginning of a course may focus on the overall structure or organization of a topic before considering the individual components that make it up. Alternatively, the course focuses on practicing the parts before the whole, and spiral sequencing, the recycle of items to ensure that learners have repeat opportunities to learn them. After determining the topic order, the next step is to design the syllabus. According to Kaharudin and Arafah, design in the perspective of materials development is defined as realization of the inventory of needs analysis into actual productions in the form of syllabus, lessons plans, and prototype of teaching materials. The idea of designing syllabus of the course can be initiated by selecting a syllabus framework which normally has close relationship to developing instructional materials based on the formulated syllabus framework. However, presenting the theories of the syllabus framework commonly employed in language teaching is not the focus of this part since the theories have been explained in the previous part of this book. Referring to the results of needs analysis in learning English, specifically speaking, skills for the student at the English education study program. This design uses integrated or mixed syllabus framework as an alignment of three different types of syllabus. It is expected that the syllabus framework can be a comprehensive and helpful cornerstone for effective learning and teaching in the speaking course one at the college. The course design in this study is called an integrated or a mixed syllabus since it combines three types of syllabus, i.e. topical or content-based syllabus, structural syllabus, as well as competency-based syllabus. The alignment of the three types of syllabus is determined to satisfy the linguistic needs and the learning needs of the students to learn to speak on speaking course 1 at the English education study program of Time Pare-Pare. Topical or content-based syllabus refers to a type of syllabus which is organized around them, topics or other units of content. The starting point of the syllabus type is more emphasis on topics or content rather than grammar, function, or situation in syllabus design. Richards identifies the advantages of course based on content-based syllabus as follows. Among them is they can facilitate comprehension and also they can motivate learners. Okay, next, developing the teaching materials. At this stage, there are two things that need to be considered, namely how to write a lesson plan, determine the organizational structure of the teaching materials. First, how to write a lesson plan. In language programs, lesson plans functions to identify learning objectives and mark rotates activities for each stage of learning. Brown proposes 6 important elements that must be considered in preparing lesson plans, namely goals, objectives, materials and equipment, procedure, evaluation, and extra classwork. Defining a teaching plan will keep both teachers and students focused on their goals, how they will get there, and what must be accomplished when they arrive. Second, determine the organizational structure of the teaching materials. The teaching materials in this section were developed based on the result of the needs analysis which had previously been transformed into the syllabus and lesson plans. The organizational structure of teaching materials for this research is planned by units where each unit represents a topic and consists of 3 lessons. Lessons identified as lesson gaining skills, lesson using skills, and lesson review. Next, reviewing and validating the teaching material. The review of teaching materials is carried out by providing instruments used to examine the elements of teaching materials, namely content, language components, activities, and complementary materials. Content refers to the subject or topics covered in the teaching materials. For the effectiveness of the content of the material, there are several statements that can be given regarding the content, including diversity of topics relevant to the level and needs, contribution of the topic to the development of language skills, and originality of the material in the topic. The language component refers to vocabulary, pronunciation, word class, meaning and diction, grammar, sentence construction rules, and language functions, language used in social context. Activities can be defined as actions of the learning process carried out to achieve certain goals. Action in this case refers to the opportunities provided to encourage student participation in achieving knowledge by collecting information and processing it by doing assignment in class. And lastly, supplementary materials refer to instruments or media that are added to support and enhance teaching activities. The last phase is review phase. Teaching instructional materials. At this stage, there are several things that need to be considered, namely how to decide the instructional materials to be presented, to determine the procedures in teaching the instructional materials. First is how to decide the instructional materials to be presented. Deciding on teaching materials to be presented. Determine 3 topics and randomly selected among 11 topics of teaching materials developed. 3 topics selected to be tested in class are used as examples of implementation procedures in the review phase, and each topic is implemented into general sections with specific time allocations and procedures for each. Second, determine the procedures in teaching the instructional materials. Procedure in teaching materials. First, implementation of course content usually takes place for 3 consecutive days involving 15 students. Second, the implementation of the evaluation aims to test the effect of teaching materials on increasing the communicative competence of the target students after going through the trial procedure. Therefore, the evaluation is carried out immediately after the implementation step is carried out. Next is evaluating learning outcomes. At this stage, there are things that need to be considered, namely how to decide the use of formative or summative evaluation. Summative evaluation refers to examining what has been learned at a specific time, such as at the end of a lesson, unit, or course. It is based on cumulative learning experiences, tests for achievement and mastery of specific performance goals, while formative evaluation focuses on determining which aspects of the design are working well or not and why. This evaluation occurs during the redesign and provides information for incrementally improving the interface. In other words, formative evaluation is used in an iterative process to make improvement before production. Summative evaluation is used to evaluate delivered products compared to be benchmarks. The next is summative evaluation. According to Kirkpatrick, summative evaluation can be carried out in 4 main levels, namely level 1, reaction. The first level of evaluation is done by assessing students' reaction or attitudes towards the learning experience. The most appropriate instrument for this level is a questionnaire to find out whether students like to learn from the instructions given or not. Level 2, learning. This level aims to measure what students have learned from the material presented by comparing their performance before and after receiving instruction. Giving pre-test and post-test is considered very effective to show that learning has occurred as a result of instruction. Level 3, behavior. At this level of evaluation, teachers need to be involved in determining that students can actually use everything they have learned from the material. To evaluate this, the lecture review learning outcomes by assessing student performance with respect to instruction. Questionnaires were also given to teachers to obtain information. Level 4, results. Results after conducting the previous 3 levels of evaluation, the effectiveness of the communicative competency-based syllabus designed for one speaking course or independent variable can be measured in the 2 aspects, namely the influence of instructional design on student achievement, or the syllabus improve its communicate competence, or dependent variable based on student responses. The result of the pre-test and post-test, as well as the lecture's perception of student performance. When the evaluation level comes to decide whether the results of the previous evaluation procedures indicate the training program has achieved its objectives, the material is reviewed and transformed into an educational context. After going through the review stage, the syllabus design becomes a communicative competency-based syllabus designed for undergraduate students. The last part that I will convey is the conclusion of this need analysis knowledge. So, the need analysis here is the need that students or teachers need to know to fulfill and improve English language skills, be it speaking, reading, writing, or listening. After we know what they need, it is necessary to make a syllabus before teaching in class. Teachers are responsible for making their syllabus with the aim that students are able to follow the direction of the teacher. In addition, here I will give a few recommendations to English language students. Learning English is difficult depending on one's ability, but that doesn't mean we can learn English. You have to pay attention to the teacher when teaching. Repeat the lesson, and you can also do more exercises. Before I end this video, I would like to say a big thank you to my parents and friends, especially to our lecturer, Dr. Kaharuddin SIPM M. for guiding the lectures very well and giving me a new understanding as well. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.